Welcome. I'm Gary Snitker. I've been asked to share about reading, and we'll use a control question to focus on reading. It's a question that we need to each ask ourselves. Who do I want to be? Now, 10 years from now, if the Lord gives us breath, we're going to be 10 years older. Nothing can stop that. And who we are 10 years from now depends on what we do today. And there's a lot of factors involved that are beyond what we can focus on. For example, we need to gather with the Lord's people to worship. We need to read scripture. We need to pray. We need to help those in need. All of these things contribute to who we are and who we are becoming. But we also need to read. Now, reading's a big subject. Some things I can't focus on right now. For example, reading broadly and reading excellent books. Those are great, but we need to push those off to the side. Research. We also need to research every day and also in academic settings. I need to push that off. I want to focus on reading in the sense of study. That is what students do, reading for our studies. And to get at that kind of reading, we can go on a reading tour. A reading tour is about trusting the professor, owning the argument, understanding the pivotal elements that support the argument, and reflect. Trust the professor. Now, I'm not saying we have to like our professors. We don't need to like them. We don't even need to agree with their views. For a big part of becoming who we are is not only affirming our own views, but we affirm our views based on what we disagree with. But most things aren't completely disagree and completely agree, but there's a whole landscape of things, and we situate ourselves partially overlapping in agreement with this, partially overlapping in agreement with that. But when we look around any class that we're in, here's this person over here. They didn't even buy their book. They're renting it. Here's this person over here. Very utilitarian approach. They bought a used book and they're going to sell it right after the class. This person over here doesn't even have a book. They're going to use their dorm mate's book. None of those are adequate to trust the professor. We want to buy the book and own the argument. This means investing, because most books are written for a single reason. What is the reason for this book? But to get at that, we have to understand all of the pivotal elements of the book that support the argument. That's the only way we can own it. How do we do that? Well, we need to reflect. And this is reflect at the end of each chapter or at the end of each reading, and reflect at the end. So it's completely inadequate to take an assignment and say, finish, check, I'm going to lunch. Each time we do a reading session, pause right there. That's the time to do it. At the end of the chapter, where there's some space, write a couple of sentences, the big points, the big takeaways from the chapter. Page back through the chapter and add a few subpoints. Write the page numbers in it as we go. Well, to get at some of this, I want to talk about the mechanics of the study tour. And here's some tools. I can't show you my tablet right now because I'm using it to film this, but everything I do on my tablet, which is the main way I read, we can do with books too. And so for a book, and I'll take one that I just most recently read, a pencil is an important tool. Another important tool is some post-it notes and some flags. I put these in the front before I start working on a book so that I have them available to mark spots as I go along. Those are the tools. Now, what do we want to do to get started? Well, for this book, I got invited to put some guest blogs up, and so I needed to read this book as part of preparing for this magazine blog. And so I'd read this book before, but I wanted to reread it from start. So where I began is with a table of contents. Page through all the table of contents. Then I go to the subject index in the back. I read the conclusion, read the introduction, and then this is one of those good old-fashioned table of contents with a lot of detail. Back to the table of contents. All of that is to get ready to read. And then as I read, I do what many people do. I write notes in the margins as I go along. And I picked an example, this particular one. So on this page, I responded, I'm kind of reacting to the author, said, why say this? What he's saying, I didn't know why he's saying it. On the facing page, I wrote, this seems made up. But even though I'm kind of pushing back here, I notice at the bottom of the page, I drew a diagram to summarize the points that the author was getting at here. And then at the end of a chapter, again, take notes right at the end of the chapter. It's a terrific way to gain some thoughts. And then this is a big trick. This is probably the most important part of what I'm telling you as far as tips. In the back cover, on where there's some pages, I make my own index as I go along. And so when I come to an important topic, I'll write that in my own meta index, or meta notes, so to speak. And as I come back to that topic again and again in key places in the book, I'll add page numbers. And that helps me to sort of organize my overall thoughts and be able to come back to the right places in the book and bring things together. Well, I need to put it into words. So when I finish a book like this one, I took the time to write out a summary response. Now, you can see here by this line, this is all it is, just a half page. But I kind of wrote my summary reaction response to it. Then I noticed this file, I printed it out for this video. This is 3 pages long. And besides the couple of paragraph summary, some key quotes, some key ideas, and where some of these things fit and the other things that I'm working on. But the issue is, looking at our studies as part of becoming who we want to be. If we're just after grades, then we don't need any tricks to know. We're not becoming anything. It's when we invest in a study tour, in really going after the opportunities that we have to study, that give us a chance to make progress in becoming an excellent version of what God would have us to be.